Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and we've got your last mock draft for our 10-team PPR league. This is the 10th spot of a redraft league. Of course, we will be putting out more content, 12-team leagues, and then of course, anything you guys put in the comments, I would love to get those formats out for you guys to help you guys out with your redraft season. So let's get right into it. All right, as you can see, I'm in the 10th spot of a full PPR 10-team league. If you guys haven't already, check out our other videos in this mock draft to kind of help you guys get a guideline of where players are falling. Maybe they're rising. Maybe you're starting to see some different types of strategies out there in the fantasy world. Again, hopefully these videos are to help you guys kind of see where players are starting to fall, to give you a strategy going forward. Of course, there are always going to be league mates that will always change that up and kind of put some wrench into your strategy. But again, this is just an idea of where players are falling and why I'm going after them in certain ways. So starting this draft on the 10th spot, obviously you get to pick back to back. Now, some of you guys might do third round reversal, which might change things a little bit. We're not going to go into those type of formats. I want to make it simple and easy for most people. So on the 10th spot here, this is where you're going to get players like Garrett Wilson, Puka, Jahmyr Gibbs, things like that. Now for me, I'm always going to try to grab a running back, because I love the hero running back strategy, and maybe a premier wide receiver. Because you're drafting in this particular spot, you've got to hit these two. They have to be 100%, because it's going to be a while before you get to that third round spot. So for me, I'm going to grab Jahmyr Gibbs. I know Jahmyr Gibbs is a solid player here, and I've talked about Jahmyr Gibbs being somewhat of a stretch when it comes to that first round. Whether you get him in the 10th spot, 12th spot, I still think he's going to be a hero running back going forward. Now, they do have David Montgomery to compete with, but I think Gibbs is obviously a great back to have in the PPR. And I know he's got that injury to get to deal with. Pay attention to that. Make sure you guys obviously follow us, whether it's on X or anything, to keep you guys updated. Now I'm going to grab a receiver. Now, on this part here, receiver-wise, I like Puka Nacua, but I'm going to go stretch and grab Garrett Wilson. Now, Puka Nacua, I think, was phenomenal for the Rams last season. I think he still will have a very strong season. I don't think he gets close to what he did last year. I think a healthy Cooper, is going to be a big deal. I think also there is the injury he's dealing with, which may hinder him a little bit, at least in the beginning of the season, and I think he'll ramp up. I do think Matthew Stafford can handle both of these receivers to give them really strong value. But because of what you're going to spend on draft capital, I'm going to stay away from Puka a little bit there. So, again, I got my running back, got my receiver. Now I've got to start filling out the rest. Now, looking at what's available here, I'm going to grab a running back in Isaiah Pacheco. Love the idea of grabbing another running back, because running backs are hard to grab and get a really big hit. You want running backs that either are going to be the bell cow, or, of course, very strong in a PPR. In this case, Pacheco is the bell cow, essentially, for the Chiefs. He does have some value in the PPR avenue. Not as strong as you would like, because, again, realistically, the receivers are really good for the Chiefs, even with Hollywood Brown being out, I'd say, the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. But I still think Pacheco is probably the play here. Now, there's still a chance Brandon Ayuk gets traded. If he does not get traded, this might make this pick a little bit more of a tough one. But I'm going to grab Deebo Samuel here, because I think if Brandon Ayuk does get traded, Deebo Samuel's value goes up. He's going to obviously be a lot more of a factor for the 49ers. They're going to need to use him. And again, I think that's a good pick as my second wide receiver. So on this particular spot in the 5th round, as you can see, a lot of the quarterbacks are starting to go. I'm still a little worried about Stroud being this high. I'm going to take him a lot later, but if you want to take him this early, that's up to you. But if I were going to be the one drafting, Stroud is going to go maybe the 8th or 9th round for me, just because his value is not enough to overcome some of these other players. So I'm not going to go quarterback here, even though it's very tempting, because as you see the quarterback starting to go. Tight end is almost one you may want to consider. You've got Dalton Kincaid on here. You got Kyle Pitts. I'm going to grab another premier player. I'm actually going to end up grabbing Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth Walker is being overlooked in the Seattle Seahawks offense. Not sure why. I think, again, as my RB3, I don't think it's a bad play. I'm not relying on him being my RB2. He has RB2/RB1 potential. They do have Charbonnet to deal with. It is a new offensive scheme. I'm curious how they're going to play out, but I think Kenneth Walker here is a nice little value. And then I'm going to grab T. Higgins for the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, a premier wide receiver who is going to be playing for his contract for the Bengals, right? He got the franchise tag. He's going to be playing for that. I think it's going to be a big year for T. Higgins. And again, my wide receiver 3, no worries at all. I would love to grab him there in that round. Now I've got to fill out the rest. I've got tight end and, of course, depth in quarterback. Now, you could obviously go quarterback here. I think Dak Prescott's a good one. Again, you could go a little bit later and still get some value because you want to grab players that are going to have the biggest upside. Dak Prescott is a great one to have. I'm actually going to end up going and grab Terry McLaurin. I think him and Jaden Daniels are actually going to have a really strong value this upcoming season. I think, again, he's not someone people talk about, but he's consistently a wide receiver 2 in most fantasy drafts, again, depending on how deep your league is. So I think that's a good one there. I am going to grab a tight end. I'm going to go on a limb and grab the rookie tight end in Brock Bowers. I think he's going to have value for the Raiders. I think he's going to be someone who's going to be played in the slot. He's going to be played on the edge. He's going to be played in line. He's going to be played all over the place because I think they see him more as a Travis Kelce-like type of player. They're not going to leave him as just the inline blocker like a George Kittle, for example. I think Bowers has a lot more maneuverability. So I like him there. Now I'm going to grab my quarterback here in Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is going to have, obviously, the rushing ability, which is why I don't mind grabbing him here. Again, I didn't have to spend a lot of draft capital. I felt like I got a lot of good starting lineup here. And then already some depth pieces. Now I'm going to grab, obviously, another running back. I'm going to go Javonte Williams. I know. I get it. A lot of people have talked about Javonte Williams, even myself. And then I kind of jumped off that bandwagon. Now, being that he's not going to be my running back 2, not even my running back 3, Javonte Williams is a nice little risk play who could end up being a nice little sleeper coming into the season because I'm curious how they're going to utilize him. Obviously, there was a chance of him being off the roster. You've got obviously all these other different players that are being put in there. McLaughlin, you got Perrine's still there. I'm not really sure it's going to happen in the Denver running back room until the preseason's done with, but Javonte Williams is, I feel, a good pick up there. So I've got 3 solid players I'm going to pick up and then kicker and defense. Now, looking at the way the players that are set up here, I'm going to go Ezekiel Elliott because I think Ezekiel Elliott has touchdown upside that is going to be huge for the Dallas Cowboys. I just think they're going to force him in the red zone, and I think that's where his value is going to help him a lot. I'm going to risk it here and grab Romeo Doubs. I think Romeo Doubs ends up being probably Jordan Love's favorite receiver. Maybe I'm naive to it. I know there's Reed. I know there's Wicks. I know there's still Christian Watson. But I think Doubs is the better receiver of those options, at least as far as consistency. I think he's going to get a lot more value. I am going to grab a backup tight end here, looking at what you've got here, just because I think Bowers, who knows what ends up happening, I'm not really sure that's going to play out. So going tight end wise, I'm going to go Ben Sinnott. I've talked about him before in my mock drafts. I've talked to him on my rookies to draft. I think he's going to be a great player. I am going to go defense and grab the 49ers. Again, you want to grab a defense early. You could grab the Jets, Cowboys. 49ers are obviously a really solid defense. You can't go wrong with them at all. And then to finish off the draft, obviously you're going to get your kicker here. Always focus on kickers that are in high-powered offenses, teams that can get down the field and score, and of course teams that can get down the field and almost score, but of course the kicker's got to be able to hit those. So get a kicker that's going to put up some points. And I'll grab Jason Sanders from the Miami Dolphins because the Miami Dolphins do know how to get down the field. All right, so that is my mock draft for the 10th spot of a 10-team league. That is the last one of this type of format. Again, stay tuned for our 12-team league. I'll be putting out content for those who have already requested in the comments. I'll be putting those out this week as well. And then right before most people are probably starting to draft, which is probably either this weekend or next weekend, I think most likely next weekend, I will be putting out how the first round should go. And then, of course, we're going to be right into the NFL season. So I'm super excited. Enjoy those preseason games. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Comment down below if you thought this was a great mock draft. Hit the like button, and I'll check you guys out next time.